Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Gail Kozakowski, the head of marketing at Crucial Logics. Emmanuel, can you just move the slide forward for us?
Sure.
Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that the session is being recorded and you'll be in listen-only mode. But please ask questions using the chat and the Q&A feature that you see up along the top. Right now, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Perfect. Amal Joshi is our CEO, and he has over 20 years of experience leading complex IT transformations. We're all welcoming back Emmanuel Bernal. He's a principal cloud solution architect at Microsoft, and he has over 15 years experience in cybersecurity, data center, and cloud technology. And with that, I will hand it over to Amal to get started.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Gail, for the introduction, and thank you everybody for joining. Let's make it a little bit interactive as it can be through chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop those questions in the chat. Emmanuel and I will do our best to answer those questions. So, if you have questions about whatever we are talking about, the relevant topic on the screen, just don't wait till the end. We can make it super interactive. Emmanuel, this is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, we started in January as our first webinar where we talked about intra-private access, and then we talked about intra-internet access, and we talked about identity, and how identity plays a big role in security. And then on the last webinar, Desiree and the team talked about SharePoint and like Copilot agents and all that good stuff. And now we are kind of building that story in terms of how do we contain and govern generative AI, right? But let's talk about this whole adoption piece first. And I don't want to, belabor the point about adoption, because I think regardless of whether or not people choose to adopt it, people have started using it. So, but if you look at the next slide, which I find super interesting, how long has it taken a certain groundbreaking technology to reach 100 million users? And, it took smartphone 16 years, it took internet 7 years, it took Instagram 2.5 years, TikTok was less than 9 months, and ChatGPT was 2 months. So it just came out of nowhere. You were hearing the buzz about it, and then boom, everyone's adopting it, right? And that's what our next slide is about. The next slide is really about AI is here to stay, right? Actually, maybe we missed a slide. So if you go one slide back, if you don't mind. There you go. That's the one, right?
Sorry,
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so AI is here to stay. Like your users have already started using it. Your commercially available AIs. You should be concerned about your sensitive data being overshared to unsanctioned LLMs, right? Most organizations don't really have an easy way to stop it. You can't really stop it, but you can govern it. And I think that's what this presentation is going to be about, is governing AI. But how do you govern AI? You need to adopt AI and govern it at the same time. And we'll only have a couple of slides about adoption. The next slide kind of talks about how the two kind of work hand in hand. So, we've tried to govern AI and then bring in the adoption. We've tried to adopt AI and then bring in the governance, and both of them kind of have its drawbacks on, if you do it on their own. You kind of have to do it on, in parallel, where you're identifying the key business scenarios, you're engaging with the stakeholders, creating a success plan that's tailored towards the organizational needs, conduct training sessions, and then implement a feedback loop. And then on the other side, from a governance perspective, you need to have visibility in your sensitive data. You need to implement access controls. You need to deploy Defender for Cloud app to monitor, any unsanctioned AIs, and then regularly assess your compliance data and the data protection policies, and then train the staff on security awareness and best practices. Because it's not the DLP aspect of the environment is not no longer on emails and external sharing links and on sending data through firewalls. It's now you know training a model. That's that DLP has kind of extended towards that as well. The next slide actually just kind of gives a roadmap And then we'll dive into more of a use case scenarios. But the roadmap really talks about you really need to know where your data is. What is sensitive data? Where does it live? Who has access to it? How is it used? Data lifecycle controls, data protection controls, data access controls, data labeling and classification. All these topics should be front and center for most organizations, because a lot of organizations aren't really thinking about their data in terms of, who, what, and why is the data present where it's present, right? And I think once you start thinking about that, then you can start layering your security mechanisms on top of it, right? Uh, Emmanuel, any thoughts on that? What are you seeing in the marketplace? Because I talk a lot with my clients, but you speak a lot with a lot of Microsoft clients, a lot of large organizations, given your role. What's your thought on this?
No, that's a really good point, Milan. I think it's the baseline of everything. I always say to my customers, and I do this question. It's in the round table when we are with high-level executives or IT departments. Do you have already a data classification strategy or implementation in place? Yes, I do with labels. So that's something that you need to start. So we are not thinking starting things from scratch. It's
Right,
basically we leverage what you already have on this, what you are showing on the slide. So we're only translating or moving that into Copilot as an extension, and that's all. Remember on Teams when we launched Teams during the pandemic times? I think
that's
it's the
right.
same. Now we need to be careful because this has processing of information. So it's a great slide that you're showing because it's the evolution and say we always do checklist of what you have, and before going into Copilot, I always suggest let's check this before going into those implementations and all.
And you bring in a good point. It's interesting because when emails were launched, and then you had your SharePoint that was launched, and then you had Teams that was launched. uh, Microsoft's already had a technology that kind of wrap around to secure it, and not a whole lot of people think about it that way, right? Like Microsoft Purview has been around for a while. It may be called something a little bit different, right? Because you guys tend to change the names of products every two years, right?
Exactly.
Intune endpoint manager, Intune again, right? Sort of thing. So, but the technology's been around for a while, and it's just an improvement and a wrapper that just now extends to a new, I would say, threat landscape. Let's just say, right? Yeah,
And I only to have this is a great slide you can show all the time to your customers, say, and then they will start asking you, hey, I'm missing this. I'm missing, for example, automation on labels.
right,
So that's something that we enhance, and it's you don't need to buy any additional license, right? You already
right,
have that. So only we need
right,
to enhance, improve those deployments, and then you're ready to compile, right? Not a lot of people say Copilot is plug and play. Remember Teams during the pandemic times, we were able to achieve a lot of results with Teams due to security and compliance, not natively Teams. Right now, I
right.
see all the companies, health industries, thanks to that. So remember, there were a lot of tools. I think it's the same approach now.
I agree, absolutely. All right, on the next slide, you, and this is the last slide about adoption. All we need to think about from an adoption perspective is it's not one size fit all. So when you are thinking about generative AI, Copilot, or anything else, you really need to kind of undertake a exercise that goes through various departments, and then look at it from how that department is going to use AI for their benefit. I always say this, and I know Desiree is listening, and she's our SharePoint expert, but she'll tell you that SharePoint, for example, is not a IT project. It's more of a business project. So you have to talk to different departments, and it's no different with Copilot, right? Copilot, you got to talk with different departments for it to be a successful deployment of Copilot, rather than it just being an app that just shows up on your computer, and people don't really know how to interact with it. And then once you add agents on top of it, now that's a game changer. Now you can connect it to third-party apps like HubSpot and QuickBooks and all these other things, and then filter in that data, and then your finance can start making use of that generative AI to get relevant data on their topic of interest. But again, this is not about adoption. You got to kind of create a success plan. But let's dive now into just the security of it, Emmanuel. And I want to pass it over to you because I don't want to take time away from your slides that you have for us.
No, thank you, Mal. I think you share a lot of, I know it will be deep dive more technical, but I think what you share is every conversation we have with all the customers. It doesn't matter the industry, and you show HR, legal. So right now, it's very important the adoption of Copilot. Only before starting, I was talking last week with some friends and say how or why you're using AI. Obviously, they were not using all of them Copilot, right? They were
Right.
using personally ChatGPT, okay? But then they asked me how I'm going to leverage this tool on my work. Say maybe they are not going to allow you, but there are other tools like Copilot and others in the market. But the most important thing that I was sharing to them is not a prompt.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
not like, hey, what are the best restaurants around? It is 5 miles in the around for me, right? Say no. It's basically what you can achieve with you at your work,
Absolutely.
accomplishing compliance and security, right? So that's
Right.
really important about what you mentioned.
Yeah.
And this is something, the risk. So I like this word because it's not about something say like you mentioned a great word. It's security, right? Say a lot of customers, what I need to be concerned around security because it's a I won't have a malware on the prompt, but I won't. But yeah, you will still have data leaks, right? Oversharing, you will see that a lot, but it's basically what you see here on the stats, right? And it's basically the index report that we have that uh, regulations, right? Lawsuits, everything that we have against that, it's basically because we don't take the controls. And I think in other times, we were doing the opposite, reactive. We were really reactive with, for example, purview with labels. Hey, I now based on regulatory standards, I need to classify as confidential this, and then I need to fix this on auditing. Now we are preventive. So that's the
Right.
reason you will see Microsoft uh, pushing a lot Purview with Copilot, right? And the
Right.
cool thing is that most of the customers, I'm going to share this from the licensing perspective. If you have E3,
Yeah.
you have a lot of the features that we're going to discuss. And right
That's
now, I
correct.
can say from our percentage, we have 80% of our customers 90, on E3 at least, right? E5 is another word because they are looking for security, but um, it's important to define that you already have it. You don't need to buy. And if you're going to deploy Copilot, just be careful about those risks that you have. I always say as a security CSA, what we can do on the things we control and the things that we can't, right? We cannot
Right.
control the user, right? So it's very
Right.
important this type of risk and how we accomplish that. And basically, we have these challenges at the moment, right? And you will see oversharing here, right? And data
Yeah.
leak. I mentioned it by I wasn't aware of the text of the slide, but it's very important. I think compliance is basically which industry is going to be tagged. They're going to be allowed maybe in next years on schools. I have seen, for example, it was weird, but I was looking at Teams on health industry. Now doctors can communicate through Teams with the team, nurses inside the hospitals or the doctor's office. And that did you never will see Skype for business or those type of things in the past. So that's
Right.
we will experience the same type of risk, but now
Right.
we involve different things, right? User experience, processing of information, and data oversharing is our biggest concern here. And sometimes our customers think that, hey, I need to do like 6 month deployments to avoid oversharing.
Right.
Basically, you can do it with labels,
Yep.
with DLP, with a lot of features that we're going to explore today, but it's very important how this is
Yep.
changing to the traditional, as you mentioned, Amal, Teams, email. Now how I'm going
An
to see
extension.
the
Yeah.
interaction of the
Yeah.
users with this tool, say, oh, this is new. So also we're enhancing and improving this type of scenarios, not only oversharing, but the data leaks, that's something that you're uploading an Excel file on
Right.
on other AI tools,
Yeah.
right?
And when you talk about compliance, I think we're not just talking about regulatory compliance. A company can say that, hey, ChatGPT is non-compliant and Copilot is compliant, or Copilot is non-compliant and ChatGPT is compliant. And you can actually control that using Purview. You can sanction and unsanction web apps, and put certain things in compliance and take others out of compliance because it doesn't agree with your organizational policy, right? So it's not just about, hey, your SOC 2 Type 2 or any other uh, frameworks that you use. It's about also figuring out what you consider compliant and what you don't consider compliant,
Exactly.
right? So yeah,
Yeah, and when we have these conversations, we need to understand first how the shared responsibility model is now with AI, right? I remember I show in the past a lot. Then customers say, "Oh, stop showing me that light of security responsibility model. I am already aware of that."
yeah,
But now we are changing because not everybody's aware of AI. So now I'm showing how we all have the same infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and Copilot, like it's a software as a service, right? How it's involved, the usage, the applications, and to tackle the security and compliance concerns related to not only Copilot, I am including generative AI, it is crucial in these cases to know about the shared responsibility model because, hey,
right,
what I'm doing, you're bringing your model, you're bringing APIs, you're bringing something. So that's something that also we need to understand as well, right? I know I think the balance will move more into the software as a service, but people will say, no, it's really close. I will start to see about or start exploring platform as a service, right? So it's important to say that it's not really close.
right,
This will be open on this receipt, but we need to understand better for all the organization. What is Microsoft responsible for? Um, what is the things that I need to interact? So important to identify, and that's the reason I'm showing here. But you see different things. It's not like remember in the past network and firewalls. Now here you have like model tuning, for example. It's a model dependent, right? And something that you can start exploring. And I think that would be the future as well. We will start seeing more modifications when you have like platform as a service model when you want to enhance or bring some connections, and that would be good because uh, we receive a lot of concerns saying who needs to know about that. So we're going to customize. I will do that.
right,
So it's very important about that, and I like this one that it's connected to the previous one because it's data protection, right? That's the main goal when we deploy Copilot from the customer. Say, protect my data, right? And then we can drill down on policies management, but also we are avoiding complexity. What does that
right,
mean is that if you already have your DLP policies,
yeah,
we are adding one block or one location or repository that is called Copilot, right?
right,
You saw improvement, you will start seeing improvements, roadmap, everything, but now you can leverage those policies as well. So that doesn't mean that you need to create like a whole bunch of new policies to avoid it, right?
right,
And one of the main things maybe you won't see on the slides of different companies that I'm seeing personally is that internally we don't train the users, right?
right,
So we avoid training the and say, okay, if you're and Amal mentioned this really good on the slide, you're HR, you're finance, how you're going to use it, or they're going to say, oh, how this works. What are the limitations? Sometimes if they feel they are limited, they won't use it, right? So I think we
right,
also need to identify the use cases that will help us to have protection and the famous word nowadays, governance, right?
right,
So I need to have control and visibility. Some companies, some users get confused with spying users.
right,
It's
right.
not. It's about the data, not the users with these AI interactions, right?
I actually want to ask this question of our audience. How many when we have people from various different organizations join in, how many of you guys have actually looked at data labeling and automatic data labeling as a preventative mechanism for data oversharing even before the advent of AI? Was that something that was, front of mind for you for organizations? So feel free to just drop that in the chat and how your experience was as well with it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that would be great because that will get us into the next slide. You connected in purpose and also it's
Yeah.
basically different features that we have for different use cases, right?
Right.
for example, right now we have data security posture management for AI on Purview. So what does that mean? Is basically you are not configuring nothing, but you are grabbing like an assessment of what needs to be configured, maybe the interaction of the users. But if you have already in place what I mentioned before, like DLP, insider risk, and information protection, that will help you to say, hey, this policy might be a fit on Copilot now.
Mhm.
That's the cool thing, that it's giving you an automatic assessment and it's providing you insights, right?
Right.
Insights around what you need to do. You know, Purview also uses AI, machine learning, so we are leveraging this to adopt this type of usage. I have received a lot of requests since the beginning of the year, say, hey, help me to understand what are the generative AI tools that my users are using now, right? And you will see Copilot, but that's what I was mentioning here, right? Different type of AI applications that we have, and we can have like a secure and governance on AI. A lot of things will come, right? You will see more upcoming features, but that's a getting in this traction of the AI tool, right? If you talk me about Copilot, it's more natively, but also we are extending that. So if you don't have Copilot, we have customers say, okay, how you can help me go with these type of tools that are generative AI extensions. So that's the reason I was mentioning across AI applications,
Right.
right?
Right. And I know Fernando just posted there saying they've started using the privacy labels, at their organization. Fernando leads IT for a health unit here in Canada, and
Excellent.
they recently, actually, we finished a project for them where we were deployed these labels for them. Now the next step, Fernando, would be to look into auto labeling so that it cannot, it can extend into SharePoint and Teams, and by extension Copilot as well, to ensure that the data doesn't fall in wrong hands, right? So anyone and everyone that's adopted that labeling, the manual labeling, you're already, I would say, many steps ahead of most organizations. And then you just have to think about how can you extend on something that you already own, right? And are paying for in from a licensing perspective. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And I will share, I think I will leave some homework here to the audience. We have now in every single module of Purview, in most of them, I think I can say insider risk, DLP, and information protections, you will see at the high level of the module when you open the solution in the portal that says home or overview. And that will get you into a turn on analytics or insights. What is that? It's basically machine learning AI of Purview assessing your environment. Depending on the module, it can take 5, 7, or 10 days to ingest some information. You don't need to buy anything. You don't need to do nothing. The tool will automatically populate and it will assess what are you doing and say, oh, maybe as Fernando say, it can be like you have 10 policies. They are working great, but 2, I will suggest extending to teams. Or maybe now that you have Copilot, I will suggest extending to that. While see, as you can see here on this case on the slide, I see a possible data leak of this policy in
Right.
ChatGPT, right? So
Right.
those type of things that will help you, right? And again, I'm not saying anything is bad or good about generative AI. It's only the examples that we're seeing on the field, right? I
Right.
was telling about my experience with my friends, and this is the case that I was showing. Say, okay, let's talk about next next week with my team because they are having these issues. So 3 use cases that you can leverage from here. DLP, as Fernando was mentioning, we have now adaptive protection, impervious, those things that are not complex right now, and that will help you to avoid like these most common scenarios that you are seeing, right? And this type. And here is like an example. I grab a screenshot of this, what I was mentioning, called AI Hub, and you will see, let me move the mouse here, the total number of prompts containing sensitive data, right? It's basically, you know, and it's something that was shared by a friend in a bank. Hey, I asked to these tools uh, to give me a summary of this Excel report. So they
Right.
upload it, right? And it was a financial report. And I was telling him, don't do that because you're going to
Right.
be on this dashboard, right? oh, I didn't know that, but again, it's user doesn't know. So it's important that we have our strategy, and also we train, we transfer this to our users. Say, okay, if you're going to use, it's going to be a corporate or an enterprise application, but
Right.
needs to have that. So it's great because I see it in two ways. When you are using an enterprise generative AI that it's accomplishing everything that we are covering here, or maybe you are not aware of things that you're using it, right? So
Yeah.
that's again governance and that's that. So that's the reason I put here visibility into the usage of AI apps, right? And it
So
also the prompting.
the one thing I know we are not going to cover that in our today's topic because there's just so much to cover. Um, you can actually then use your Defender for Endpoint integrated with Defender for Cloud app and start blocking these things, third-party AIs very easily and effectively, right? Like, sanctioning and unsanctioning things on the application. So not only can you look at it and say, okay, Google Bard seems to be my number one issue. Okay, I'm just gonna, my verbal compliance or written compliance policies with people aren't working. We're gonna stop it, right? And then make that decision to tailor down to exactly what you want it to be. I mean, DeepSeek a couple of months ago was a major, I would say, concern for a lot of organizations just because of its origins mostly. Forget the technology, how good it is, and all that stuff, but just its origins were concerning to a lot of companies here in North America and Europe, right? And with Purview, with Defender for Cloud app, with Defender for Endpoint, you could have easily just blocked it as soon as it arrived on the scene because it would have been categorized as LLM, and that category would be blocked, and then you don't have to think about it, right? So I just wanted to add that in there. I know that we're not going to talk about it, but it's something that you can take this and extend it into other areas of controls that you can do for your organization. So
No, but it's great,
yeah,
Amol. You mentioned, so basically Amol mentioned two layers. First, the app, right? I want to be very restrictive. Let's block the app. But in case you're opening the door, what about the information, right? You're now
right,
using the app. What about the information, right?
right,
So you will see this year, I think will be the highest one where we have a high amount of users inside the companies uploading files that are
right,
confidential that and say, hey, I need this governance. Then we will
right,
see more evolution on features, but I think it's good because you will have now visibility. I think this will improve with things that we learn as use cases,
right.
right? And this is another example, as you were mentioning, hey, I have the app. I
Yep,
have the other one is like visibility, but here it's like, hey, I want to copy this text and then I need to paste it in a consumer AI app, right? So we can
yep,
also block that. This is another example that you're pasting on Bard. And then as Fernando was, I'm sure you're sorry for putting you in the spot, Fernando, but that's a great example because DLP is helping you at the end, right? Again, we're not talking here about Copilot, right? But it's basically the layers that you have. If you want to use Copilot, would be the same, right? Obviously,
yep,
it will be Microsoft, but we are extending that. That's the cool thing about what you see here, the blocking. It's that we want to accomplish with customers.
yep.
To be quite honest, we're going to start to see the opposite as well, right? This company, don't go to Copilot, don't go to the. But I want to be very transparent with you. It's not about the company. It's not about the vendor.
It's
It's
AI
about
agnostic. It doesn't matter which AI. It's
exactly.
yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah,
if you're using the other one, I will recommend to the other company to have these data lakes and governance,
right,
right?
right.
What I see personally, and I very familiarized, have very good friends in our companies. We arrived early on the information protection. Remember when it was Azure information protection, and then our companies were like a little bit delayed on this information protection. I'm talking about Defender, right? So it's really
Yep,
important how we can leverage this type of thing, right? And the second one, the most famous, you will see on the news, on your favorite social media that you want to read news, it's oversharing, right?
yes.
And it's something that it's really, I saw some news and, hey, this oversharing. There is a specific restriction on SharePoint when you want to configure Copilot. I'm talking here now about Copilot, right? So we have more than sensitivity labels. We have by default on Copilot. If you go deep dive on the M365 Copilot, we have a feature that says you can turn on or off share. Basically, we turn it off to avoid these type of things. If not, you can use your labels, and same as DLP, right? And what we'll do here, that's the reason I'm highlighting this on green, is that we classify the user as a potential risk, right? So not blocking, it's not identity as a mode, but we are saying, hey, this is a risk user that it's sharing
Too much
information
information.
of this project, yeah, and Purview will be honoring the controls and permissions of your DLPs, right? Say, and I will. It is a really clear example that as Amol was mentioning, Teams, Outlook. Hey, I'm not able to share you social security number on Teams.
Correct.
The same with Copilot. You only need to add the location, and that's all, right? So that's the reason we are talking about faster deployments. Remember, you mentioned the phones, right?
Yeah.
16 years now, we need to do the same with Purview. So that's the reason we are adding like another location only, but we don't change the structure of the policy, right? And another feature that is really important around Purview, I know it's not DLP, but it's we use communication compliant as well to detect sensitive information in prompts. Similar as we did in the past with Teams, we continue using that, but it's basically this will detect if there are prompts associated with this project, right? And you can see this is Purview, right? Basically, only the things that you are seeing, and for example, if you are trying to get like project confidential, you will have encryptions, everything like the same, right? So that's the reason I'm running here some examples that you can leverage. And okay, I will go out from M365, then go to the prompts. You can do the same, right?
Right.
So it's like an extension. That's a cool thing around Copilot. And then if you want to see specific things, they will inherit the label. So it's all with respect. And maybe a lot of you have seen that. So it's like inheriting here the labels, the confidential permission. And if I put, for example, hey, I want to see all the confidential files for a mall, right?
Yeah.
You will be blocked, right? Because
Right.
it will be under SharePoint, oversharing, and that will be blocking that. And then also we are not really restrictive, right? It's basically we label it to protect the message, right? And what information needs to be confidential and what information doesn't need to be confidential. So those type of things that will help you on that scenario, right? I don't know, Amol, if you want to share some experiences here around your deployments, your concerns with your customers, say
Well,
this is type of things that we
I
see.
think, it just this whole thing takes me always back to the fundamentals of security, right? And when you think about your fundamentals of security, first of all, your identity needs to be secured. Then your tenant needs to be properly hardened, right? Have the capabilities like DLP, AI, it used to be called AIP, then it started, it was then Microsoft Identity Protection, now Purview, right? Have those capabilities turned on even if they are manual, not automated, even if they're manual. Then you have your conditional access policies properly turned on. Your MFA is like table stakes, right? But once you kind of do all that stuff, when a new technology just comes in, like you mentioned, it's just adding that source or adding that target to the to the policy and say, hey, now I want to use these policies that I've already developed back in the day for SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, whatever. Let's extend it to Copilot as well, right? It just becomes it just goes back to like setting up your Microsoft stack in a standard fashion, and then you just layer on. If your technology that gets too far deep, then it becomes harder to catch up. But if you've been keeping up with certain things that we've been preaching for past 7 years, I think this just becomes a simple addition to your current stack, and then that's
Exactly.
it. You don't have to worry about it, right? So
No,
yeah.
that's great. Yeah, and some of the things that I want to connect here, based on our previous use cases or the things that we're seeing, is that not everything is reactive, right? Or everything needs to be like it needs to be like a high risk or something. We have seen that also you can leverage e-discovery auditing that will help you to understand, hey, maybe I need to go back maybe 1 month ago. How was the usage? Maybe not the AI hub, but we can go to e-discovery, right? Same as we do on Teams or Outlook. And I remember Discovery, we were using that a lot on Exchange, right? When Exchange Online was launched some years ago, we say, and then we connect that with retention. The retention, for example, that we use in Copilot is really short, but we have it,
Right.
right? You can extend it. By default, by architecture, it's really short, but then you can extend. Hey, I want to see what are the prompts that the HR team does here. So those type of things, right? And it's basically, and again, don't feel like these tools say if I'm maybe translating something in Portuguese, they're going to spy me. No, the most important thing is that you can keep using that because it's the most important that you can leverage for your daily work, but you need to find something that improves maybe hours, improves your process, or maybe you're efficient in something. So that's a cool thing that you start exploring. And I think again, this is a journey. We have launched this some years ago, but now we are in this journey that you will see some improvements. We have now a lot of roadmap requests from customers. Say, I now need to DC, but you can see here on the screenshot that we can still adding a lot of things every single month, I say, right? So keep an eye also on the roadmap that we have in our communities, and that will help, right? So it's basically how you see, and this is what I was mentioning, right? This is the reasoning purpose. This is an example of retention policy that you will see on the screen, but it is the location. Okay, so you are now applying your retention policy that you need for this industry to be compliant on Copilot, right? So that's something that you can learn. You can see, right? It's basically the same approach. We are not changing everything. We are logging the user activities in Copilot. So we're not changing anything. Obviously, if you want to go with the discovery and go deeply on this type of investigations, you can do the same as well, right? You can see here as an example of there is a prompt. You can show me all the reasons why it's a weak stock, and then it was blocked, right? And then it was a disengaged communication. So see, okay, the tool is behaving well, right? So it's accomplishing, and at the end, this is what we get. And thank you all for providing your feedback. This is the reason I want to share at the end: security, compliance, privacy, and responsible AI. We will see if you read some books about AI, about training, about the current era of AI, you will be that next concern will be responsible AI, right?
100%.
We start seeing how malicious things are occurring if they're using AI. So obviously Microsoft is investing. There are a lot of associations, right, with different organizations. We need to avoid it, right? You have seen like, hey, people create fake images to do scam, phishing, or other worse things that I don't want to talk about in the call, but we need to keep an eye on that, right? So well, we're starting from different journeys, data lake, but then the concern will be responsible AI, right? Remember, these engines grab models of different providers. So we need to make sure, and that's the reason I like the equation, right? Because it's basically what we need to be concerned about. I know we are in this era, compliance, privacy, but then we're starting enhancing a lot of things with security and responsible AI. So don't leave anything behind. Make this part of your strategy for generative. I will say. I know it's for Copilot, but this is the journey that Amol was mentioning as well on Purview. Okay, my foundation, discover sensitive data. Now, you asked me at the beginning what I'm seeing with the customers.
Right.
With the deployment of Copilot and M365, we are seeing that now customers are discovering data that they were not aware that now they are confidential.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
They say, oh no, we use teams, everything. We have barriers, federation, identity, but guess what? It's basically now we're still discovering again. So it's a process, it's a cycle, but that will help us improve it. And now this will be like, sorry for my sales commercial, but now we're seeing customers moving from E3 to E5 due to automatic labeling, right? Say, I don't want anything to happen. Let's do this label in the prompt if I'm not aware, right? Or maybe, as you mentioned, if we are doing governance with third-party apps or with different cloud apps, I want to extend that. Remember, with DLP and information protection, currently we can do it. If someone wants to upload a file that is not confidential, and then they upload it to a third-party drive, cloud drive, storage drive, it will be automatically labeled. So those type of things that will help you from this perspective, right?
Amazing.
I want to share some examples right here of how the experience is basically, right? I know we were talking more deeply around the back end, but it is how also I see basically the customers are choosing between two tools right now, okay, for corporate usage. And one of the main things is that we're not changing or bringing complexity, right? As you can see here, on this scenario. Let me run it again a little bit. So here you will see that we're trying to make things easier for the prompt, right? I think the user gets used to the tool and then they improve their own prompting, right? I know there are a lot of prompting courses, but that will help to understand how we help them. For example, here we write something and we connect the customers that we have visibility and they are labeled and what we can interact. So the different things that we are bringing also to this type of a scenario, right? And how the experience is to the users, how they are visible in Copilot, right?
Right.
That's the important thing. We're bringing that visibility as I was showing before and how you start moving with this type of configuration. So we are not saying, hey, this is hidden, right? This is not like a mystery. No, we are telling you that it's confidential, or maybe it's high confidential, or maybe it's for all employers. So, uh, and you give it a try. Don't be
Right.
scared to run a prompt, right? Say
Right.
maybe I didn't know most files were confidential. So, oh, I will receive only. I'm sorry, I cannot. But that's something that we need to avoid because we have the opposites: customers that overshare and
Right.
customers that they don't want to input anything or ask
Right.
for anything. Well, as long as you have this configuration, you will start seeing how they configure and they will inherit the sensitivity label when you are doing something around that, right?
Right.
So if you are creating a financial report, the information that you have handy that you will be able to see, but that's basically what we are keeping, okay? So we are preserving and collecting relevant data for everything that you need for audits, inquiries, and litigation, for example, if needed. But that's something that also auditing and regulated industries are requiring, right? Okay, if there is a specific case, I need to check what was the interaction with this report, maybe for taxes, maybe for expenses. So, and I need to consolidate something. So that's the reason we are extending. And in this case, for example, we are bringing filters that will help us to understand much better these type of things. And this is the location that I was mentioning for different tools that we have.
Good
So all the things
policy.
that you will see that are now available, everything that you see here, it's general available. And something you'll start seeing when you open the portal on public preview, but that's something really important. And only I want to close with this demo, that it's basically a video that you will see when we are I was talking a lot of non-Copilot apps, right? So, or not anything related. So here it's basically the case that you were looking here as an example of how I need to perform something that I need to send. It was basically live. You will see the BART demo, uh, not in screenshots, but when you try to go into another generative AI, and then you will apply here, as Samuel was mentioning, the DLP policies and what Fernando was showing. So it's basically the things that you can leverage as well. Again, it's not about the tools, right? Tools will be competing against each other, features, users, but the most important thing is what you see, the data loss prevention of data leaks, that we don't
Absolutely.
want to have that. And I have seen recently, I think from 6 months ago, a lot of data leaks using personal or not corporate. I make the selection. We have these enterprise generative AIs and others that use personally, and that will get into that, right? Because
Absolutely.
you can save 8 hours of your day uploading a report, asking for a summary, and say, "Oh, I'm ready. I have 1 hour of that instead of 8 hours." So that's something that is
It-
mind changing for the user, but they don't know that it's confidential or what they need to do.
I
So
mean that
also that's important.
at the onset of ChatGPT, I think that happened to Samsung, right? Samsung, it was a in the public news where Samsung's proprietary code was found on ChatGPT because the developers were copying and pasting that into ChatGPT
Mm.
just to get it, error checked, right? And ChatGPT was doing a great job of it, but at the end of the day, that code was then used to teach ChatGPT more, get more enhanced on coding languages and stuff like that. So it started appearing on other people's prompts and responses to prompts and things like that. So it is quite important in terms of knowing where your data is, knowing what kind of labels do you need on the data, maybe auto labeling it to be very precise about it or more secure about it, and then ensuring that you have a sanctioned AI application, be it Copilot, be it Bard, be it whatever, right? But it's a sanctioned one that your organization is sponsoring, so to speak, so that you can create your controls around it. Um, I want to open this up for any questions. I hope this was helpful. Was this information really useful? Did you guys know about this already? There's a question here, and can you tell us the ad of Copilot versus Power Virtual Agents for integration on Teams? The advantage of Copilot versus Power Virtual Agents. Do you know the answer to that one?
No, I'm not a modern work expert,
Okay,
but basically what only what I can share is that basically when you have the Copilot feature, you can extend it to Teams,
okay,
right? And remember, Power Virtual Agent, it's only limited to something, right? Specific use. Because with Copilot now, we're bringing more agents. Now that's the conversation of the month. So start bringing that. So that's the main difference. One is use case, what I know, and the other one is basically bringing all the models and all the agents together, right? But a modern work CSA will be the best to provide
yeah.
that in
You
specific
know,
for Teams for your question.
You know what I'm going to do is, Mulod, we are going to meet next week, if I'm not mistaken. So I will have that answer prepared for you when we meet next week. So
Thank you, Mo.
I'll check internally and give you that answer. Any other questions? Okay. If if you guys thought that the information was useful, please toss a thumbs up into the chat. Um, on the next slide, you have the contact information for both me and Emmanuel. Emmanuel, if you want to just move to the next slide. You guys know where to find us. As a result of that, just send us a message on Teams or send us drop in a line. If I don't know the answer, if Emmanuel doesn't know the answer, we will make sure that we get someone between
Oh,
my team.
I saw someone posted maybe one expert that
Oh, I was gonna go to her anyways. I was gonna go ask Desiree an
yeah,
answer to that
exactly.
question. So she's already done that. So the answer to that question is Power Virtual Agents are now part of Microsoft
Hmm.
Copilot Studio and Copilot agents for advanced
That
chatbot
chatbot, yeah.
capability. Okay, there you go. Right. Actually,
Yeah,
when
because
I said
remember
that I'm
we
gonna find out, I would have gone to Desiree to ask this question anyway. So I'm glad that she posted that. So that's
but that's
great.
a great question. I
Okay.
want to encourage the audience that this type of questions, don't keep it for yourself. Now with the
Yeah.
Copilot AI, every single question is important, right? Because we are moving from some things based on what you mentioned that we used before. For example, we use a lot in the past Power Apps. We're still using that, but I don't know what evolution of Power Apps will be in the future, right? Maybe they will be replaced. I don't know, but those questions are really important because you can start seeing the difference, right? And the advantage now, how we merge different. So in this era of AI, Copilot, Security Copilot, uh, every question is important, right? Don't say no. I think I like the questions because we are receiving that a lot. And now, um, you will see a combination of solution area this year that we're going to share. So that's important how you see the merge of this type of solutions that will help you in the field to leverage
Absolutely.
everything. So now
Absolutely.
more consolidation, less isolation on this type of tools. So
Yeah.
thanks, Desira, for your answer and helping us from the modern world. I am not for modern world, but this will help a lot to the audience as
Uh,
well.
No, this is fantastic. Emmanuel, thanks